Alright, hey guys, welcome back to another Unreal Engine 4 tutorial. We're back making our inventory system. And last time we made the assign static mesh macro here. I'll put a link to the video here just so you can click on it so you can catch up if you haven't watched this video. Where this assign static mesh macro does is it just figures out which item we're dealing with, and based on which item we're dealing with, we're going to assign the appropriate static mesh with the correct material onto it, and basically reset its collision so that we can collide with it later on once it's dropped in our level. So what we need to do now is go into our drop items macro. We also made this in the last video where we had the series of branches checking to see which object is being dragged or which slot is being dragged. And it's from here we want to start figuring out which item we need to be dropping. So we're going to need to create basically 5 macros to do essentially the same thing. So there's going to be a good amount of copy and pasting here. So let's get started. Let's create the new macro. We're going to call it drop item from slot 1, and it just needs the typical input output executable pins. So name the first one in, name the out. We can move the output out of our way for right now, and what we need to first do is set up a branch, because when we're dragging these items and if we want to drop them into the scene, we basically need to know what position the mouse is when we release it. So obviously we have that that max height where the menu bar is, so we want to check whether or not the player is releasing the mouse above that position or not. So we need to grab the mouse release Y position. We need to get that, and we want to see if it's greater than or equal to a certain float. And we're going to set this to 630. Then we're going to pull out a branch. And if this is true, this is where we're going to spawn basically an actor here. So we're going to do spawn actor from class. And the class we're going to choose is BP inventory child. So BP inventory item child. And basically, so if this is false, so because basically the 0Y above is the very top, so 0Y is the top of the screen, so we want to know whether or not, if this is greater than or equal to 630, we don't want to do anything, but if it's not less than or equal to, or greater than or equal to, we're going to go ahead and spawn a new actor here, and it's going to be the BP inventory item class actor, and we basically need to tell it where to spawn, and it's going to be where the mouse position is. So we need to get the player controller, we need to get the hit result under cursor by channel. So we're seeing where the mouse is, basically where it collides when it makes a trace. And we're going to break this hit result. We're going to get the location. And we're going to break that vector. And now we're going to make a vector. We're going to pull the X and Y, the X and Z pins here, because that does correlate to the X and Y plane in 3D for what we're doing right now. Now we're going to grab the vector, we're going to make it transform. We're going to make rotation 90 in the roll, that way it'll face the camera. And then our default scale, we set that way back when to 1.5 in all axes. Then we can plug this transform in. So basically what we're doing, if the player basically drops the item anywhere above the visible menu bar, it will spawn a new inventory item actor and set its transform to the location where the mouse is at the time. Make sure it rotates 90 degrees in the roll, which will face it to the camera, and we set the scale to 1.5 in all axes. So at this point we're spawning something. And what we need to do now is take this return value, and since it's an inventory item child, it'll have an inventory name parameter. So get inventory item name. We're going to do set of that instead of get. Plug in this executional pin into the set. And now we need to get the HUD reference. So let's drag that out. We're going to get the slot 1 item name, because right now we're dropping out slot 1. We want to plug that in. So we're assigning its name to the slot 1 item name that we get from the HUD. And then from here we're going to need to get that macro we made in the last video. So the assign static mesh inventory item, we're going to drag that out. It's going to plug into the set. The item name is going to be the slot 1 item name that we're pulling out here. And the inventory item is going to be from that child. And if you remember from there, we check to see what the item name is, and then we assign it the static mesh based on that inventory item, and we set collision in this. So we got that going. And what we need to do now is remove this item name from our item name array. And that happens in the item inventory class. So let's get the inventory reference. Do item name array, so we're going to get that. And we're going to remove an item. Let's get that in place. And the item we're going to remove is the slot 1 item name. So we can just copy and paste that. Just to clean this up a little bit. So we're removing that item name from that item name array. And then we also got to remove that item from the item list. So let's get the item reference again. Get the inventory item list. We're going to do a remove here as well. So remove item. And the item we're going to remove, we need to copy and paste this again. We're going to have to do get. So we're getting the at 0 location in the item list. That's the item we're going to remove. So once we remove the name from the item name list, then we then remove that item from our item name. I'm sorry, just the item list itself. And then we need the item reference again here for the inventory reference. We're going to get the number of inventory items and subtract that by 1. And then we're going to get the inventory reference again, and we're going to set the number of inventory items. And we're just going to minus that by 1. And then this is where it gets a little, not complicated, but just different. But again, all we really do is once we assign that mesh and we get that spawned into our system, into our level, that's when we want to remove it from our array and remove the slot 1 item name. We want to remove the item itself as well. And then we want to basically subtract the number of inventory items by 1. And now what we need to do is basically reassign the names of our items here. So we need the HUD reference. And we're going to set slot 1 item name, and we're going to set that to slot 2 item name. So basically what this is doing is once we get rid of that item in slot 1 item name, we want to move everything over one by one. So if we take off slot 1, slot 2 is going to become slot 1, slot 3 is going to be slot 2, so on and so forth for all 5 slots. So let's plug this up here. Now we basically need to do the same thing for slot 2 and slot 3. So let's set slot 2. We can also get slot 3. Plug that in. Then for the same thing for slot 4 and slot 3. So we need to set slot 3. And we got to get slot 4. Okay, now we need to set slot 4. Get slot 5. Okay, so we're almost done. So now all we can really do for slot 5 is just make it blank and set it to none. Just because it's not going to have anything there. Set slot 5. And then after we do that, we want to set the temporary names too. So set slot 1 item name temp to slot 2 item name temp. Do that all the way to slot 5. And we just need to connect it through here. Set slot 2 with slot 3 here. And again, we're doing this with the temporary names here. So now we gotta get slot 3, get slot 4, set slot 4, get slot 5, and set slot 5 to none. And then we just need to plug that into the output. So let's grab our output, plug it up. Let's just make sure that's it. Yep, that's it. Let's compile. Let's go back into the check for inventory. I'm sorry, no, to the drop items. Let's grab that new macro we made for drop item from slot 1. Plug that into the true here. And then let's plug it into the output. Let's move our output up a little bit. So we basically need to make that macro for each one, but I believe this is enough for us to swap slot 1 and drop it out. It may not be perfect yet because there's more to do, but we should be able to. Okay, it doesn't look like it yet. And I think I know why. Because we haven't put in the main macro yet. So, this is going to go, the drop items macro is what we need. We need to disconnect the check for inventory slot swapping, which is in our main event graph, plug it into the drop items, and then the drop items can then go back into the inventory item mouse click event there. So let's try again. It should work now. Okay, it's still a no-go. And that may be because we're not completely done yet. Let's go back to our drop item from slot 1. Everything is plugged in. So it just maybe we need to work on the rest of it first. So give me a moment here while I review some things. We also need to copy the reset inventory slot dragging variables. We need to make it, we have to do it here as well. And then we can plug that back up. And then everything in drop items is going through. So it should work. Let's try again. If it doesn't work, we'll just keep going. We'll figure it out. Still not going, huh? This is bugging me a little bit. let's do some debugs. Let's see if this is getting called at all. Let's do a print. It should just say hello when we drag and drop it out. So let's see if that's getting called. Okay, so it's not even saying hello, so that all is not getting called. Get rid of that. Okay, let's see. Let's try again. Okay, now it's getting called. We'll leave this debug in here, and then we'll just plug that back to the spawn actor. If this does work, I'll show you what I did to fix it. There we go. So we dropped it in, and then we open up our menu, it's gone. And we can't redrag until we pick it up again. So that's working, and what we had to change is basically, for one reason or another, the drop items was not being called from the check for inventory slot swapping macro that we made. And I realized we had the sequence in here with the second pin that wasn't going anywhere, so we just made sure the second pin is going to the output. That way we know everything's getting plugged in essentially here. So that's all we had to do to change that. So now we can do that for slot 1. Now we just need to do that for slot 2 and slot 3 and so on and so forth. So what we can do is copy everything from the drop item from slot 1 macro. You can copy that. Create a new macro. Call it drop item from slot 2. Oops, misspelled that. Name these inputs here. So an executable pin for in and an executable pin for out. Paste. Hook it up. And the variables we have to change here are the slot 2 item name that we're plugging in. So change that to get slot 2 item name. Plug it up. Plug it into the assign static mesh. Then we can copy that and remove that from the array. Leave everything else alone. And then it's here. That we can essentially change things up. Since we're not dealing with slot 1 item name, we don't need to replace it. So we can delete both the one for the normal and the temp. Connect these up. So what we need to do instead, we leave everything else alone, except now all we have to do is just plug it back up to the output. So let's grab our output. And then connect this diagonally. Compile that. Go back into the drop items here. Grab the drop item from slot 2 macro. Plug that up. Now we can compile and save. And we should be able to drag and drop whatever's in slot 2 out. So let's grab 3 items just so we have 3 items. So slot 2 is the top hat, so we can drag and then we can drop it. And there's the top hat. And then if we go back in, the jump rope is now number 2. We can drag and drop that out. And then last but not least is the backpack. We can drop that out. So everything's working so far. So all you have to do is this basically 3 more times. So let's make another macro. 2 executable pins for in and out for input output. And then we can go from drop item from slot 2. We can just copy and paste everything we have. And also just make sure you name this new macro, drop item from slot 3. We can move the output for right now. Let's paste everything, line it up. Let's move our output on this side. Change the slot 2 item name to slot 3 item name. Plug that up appropriately here. Copy that. Delete that there. We'll remove slot 3 item name. And then all we should have, let me double check this, but all we should have to do here is delete the next rows here. So slot 2 and slot 2 temp, we don't need those. Plug everything back up. And then output, just make sure you plug that in. Compile that. Go back to drop items. Let's get the drop item from slot 3 macro plugged in. Plug that up to the output. Compile. And then we should be able to play. And now we should be able to drop out slot 3. So let's grab 4 items here. So drag out slot 3. Now it's book that's in slot 3. Drop that out. Drag out slot 1. And then top hat becomes slot 1. And there we go. So now we got to do this a couple more times. So let's make the new macro. Let's call it drop item from slot 4. Make the 2 executable pins for in and out. Let's copy and paste all the information from the slot 3 one. So copy, move the output out of the way, paste, put everything in place. Change the slot 3 name to slot 4. Plug it back up. Copy that. Remove that instead. And then we can remove these 2 for slot 3 and slot 3 temp. Move things closer, hook it up diagonally. Get our output. Plug that up. Compile. Go back to the drop items macro. Let's drag in and drop our drop item from slot 4 macro. Plug that up to out. Compile. Save. And now we should be able to drop out slot 4 onto our scene. So we have 5 items. We can drop out the book. And now the key is in the 4th slot. We can throw out the key. And then we can throw out the backpack, throw out the top hat, and then we can also throw out the jump rope. So all we have to do is now do that for slot 5. So let's create a new macro. Name it drop item from slot 5. Make the 2 executable pins for in and out. Go into slot 4, copy everything, paste it into the slot 5, move everything in place. Let's get our output pin on that side. We're going to need to make the slot 5 item name. Plug that in. Copy that. We're going to move that from the array instead. paste that in, put in slot 5. We don't need these slot 4 and slot 4 temp sets here. We just need these last ones. Let me just double check that to be sure. Yep, okay. And then we can just plug this into the output. Oops. Compile, go back to the drop items, drag in the slot 5 macro we just made, plug that up, and then that goes into the output. Compile, save. Now we should be able to drag and drop out the 5th slot. So the key, we're able to do that. And we're also able to pick it up. And when we do that, it goes back to slot 5. And then we can drag these out. And then we can pick these back up in any order. And we can also maneuver them around. And everything is working. So that's pretty much it. We're probably going to make one more video just to add one last detail in, but this is basically the last video for this. This one's the one that gets everything working 100%. The next video will probably just be a quick recap video, as well as a video in the same video being one last detail we're going to add if you want to use it or not. But again, this will be the main last video besides the last one that will recap. So I want to just thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Hey guys, well, I want to just thank you guys for watching, again, for supporting the channel as well. If you haven't already, please subscribe either by clicking on me or the subscribe button above. If you want to see more videos here, you can click on either video on the right hand side. From there you can check out more blueprint tutorials as well as blueprint examples and things like that. And also like, comment, share the video. I want to see how many people we can get going here with this tutorial, and definitely let me know what you think. Again, thanks for watching. Bye!